Okay. I think that I fixed it. So I think I fixed it. Yeah. All right. So I did. I fixed it. All right. Yep. Sometimes you just got to unplug it and plug it back in because I don't know why it wasn't working. It should. Anyway, so we'll see how it goes. Um, yeah. So that should be working now, hopefully. Well, Kyle heard me. So turn it off. Well, yeah. Yeah. Sometimes you got to turn it off and turn it back on to make it work. So, yeah, just some updates of some stuff. And let me hang on. I'm trying to do too many things at once here. So, because I got to get the real boss here. Anyway, so yeah, so the part that nobody heard apparently that I was talking about before. Oh, me and technology just don't get along. So, yeah, so I was um have been working on, and I had to make a very, to me, that felt very fast, big life change. So I am finishing up. This is going to be my last, it's next week between now and next Tuesday, my last week here at the school that I'm at. And I don't really talk about where I go for several different reasons, but I don't want to put my experience out there to either because I just don't want to do that. I don't know that the entire thing is something that needs to be even said. So, um, and I don't know why. It's weird. Okay. Anyway, um, so but I opened up my email this morning because I've been dealing with doing a teach out agreement, and so they, and that's a pretty in my experience, has been a very easy process, and it took less than a week, and um, dealing with the school. And so now I have opened my email this morning, and they sent me my new credentials for the school. So I now have an email address at my new, a new student email address at the new school. I've got Canvas access. I've got like, you know, there's a whole bunch of stuff that this morning in that email that they sent me, it was like, yep, this is not just the acceptance information that I got yesterday, that yes, an enrolled student on the books, and I know what my classes are. Like, I have an email account, I have the Canvas platform account, I have um, a meeting with the 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 dean in charge of biblical studies. They've been in contact. We're gonna get together and meet. Like, it has been such a positive experience on that end of things, that it makes me feel a lot better about my decision to leave the school that I'm at, even though that was so incredibly difficult. And but this week is going to be, I think, well, yesterday was hard as I'm starting to tell people I'm leaving, and started to tell the very important people in my life there that I'm leaving. And so it's going to be a very emotional week, I think, and trying to wrap all that stuff up and get that done. And it just really makes me, and on one hand, it's very sad having to walk away from something that has been so profoundly life changing and impactful. But at the same time, sometimes we have to make those, those choices. And it makes me incredibly grateful for what I did learn there, for the people that I did meet, and hopefully for some of the friends that I will get to keep. That's just one of the realities of life when you leave one situation, it's harder to stay connected. So, there's always seasons to everything. I just finished that big, um, theological look at the book of Ecclesiastes, which was helpful in surviving this whole process because it was really tough to make some big decisions. And so that chapter is almost completely finished. I have two finals and a paper to finish tomorrow to turn in, and then I'm completely done, and I don't have to really deal with the old school anymore. But um, yeah, so it's weird to be on the mostly done end of this whole process because it's been extremely stressful, and but I have also learned a lot, and um, learned to love and appreciate the book of Ecclesiastes. I have um, really learned a whole lot more about. I was talking with a really good friend this morning, and we were talking just kind of about big changes and things, and sometimes we go, like Jesus always separated himself and went to the wilderness to pray before he had to do big things. And in the process of being in the wilderness, in the process of decision making and making, um, like it sometimes, you hear a lot of Christian platitudes that I think flatten some very beautiful things about the realities of God and being in relationships that to me really annoy me, but misunderstand the meaning of some of those texts. And I think one of those things that has really come out to me that like will people will reuse or misuse things like God's grace is sufficient in a way that means that I have grace that carries me as far as the things that I can do. Like it's propping up me and my independence and my ability to do these things on my own with God walking with me, and leaves the dependence on me. And or they will pull out of context the God won't this idea that God won't give you more than you can handle, which is again context kills that idea because it's not more than what I can handle. God's not going to he's like, here, do all of this on your own. That's not the point. He's not going to give us more than we can handle, letting him handle it. Like it's a really more a way of saying nothing in our lives is too big for God to handle if we let God handle it. And I think this has been a situation and a season of going back in and relearning some of those lessons that I get too independent sometimes. I get too reliant on myself sometimes, and I need to stop doing that. I need to leave the things for God. I need to leave God to to be the one that I rely on all the time. It shouldn't be, sometimes I think I don't know, I get into this, it's a terrible habit, and I get into this terrible habit, and I don't know, I can't speak for anybody else because I'm not anybody else, but I realized that a lot of the times I was praying about things afterwards and not praying about things as much beforehand, and that's backwards. I mean, we should be praying for things on both sides and all the way through, but it just occurred to me how more it was a lot more of, well, God, I got myself into this mess. Now what do I do? And there would be less of that if I spent more time praying about it thoroughly on the front end, and then thinking, yep, praying for the thank you, God, for leading me through this because I started where I should have started and not ended up having to do a lot of praying to get me out of messes that I made myself because I tried to do it on my own. And so it's been a very interesting season of learning some very tough lessons, and have had some very good friends helping me through this process and very patiently kindly not pointing out that to me, that that's the way that should probably not have gone. So, um, yeah, and then there's some things going on with that are going to be going on with this channel, and I don't want to get too specific about it because that um, it's pretty much I think a thing that's going to happen, but um, I want to just be respectful of everybody involved in the thing and not say too much more. But I think it's going to be fun. We're going to have some really good stuff and some opportunities to do some bigger things, and so it'll be really exciting, I think. And we've got a video. We're going to be um, streaming tomorrow about why Leviticus matters. Hi, Syrup. It's good to see you. Um, talking about why Leviticus matters. And this is another one of those things that's been a surprise. And again, I don't want to, give away too much before the stream tomorrow, but I've never thought about um, gratitude in Leviticus. So there's one for you, Kyle. Think about gratitude in Leviticus and how Leviticus is about gratitude. And so, and I'll just leave it there. I don't want to give away too much more because it's going to be fun. I think I'm really excited about this, and it's a new group of friends that I've made, and it should be really fun and a good break. I think that I've needed from a lot of the stress that's been permeating everything at this point. So, but yeah. So that was basically just thinking out loud and thinking about like it's Advent, and I realized this morning yesterday Sunday was Advent, and normally we're big. I'm a big believer in Advent. I love celebrating a form of Advent. Not being from a high liturgical tradition. We have a very different practice for Advent. That's not a formal liturgy. It's not a formal um, structured thing. We just kind of do our own expression of the contemplating of um, the coming Messiah and how that the significance of that. And but I was thinking about that some more, and I've had the O Come Emmanuel in my head. It's been stuck in my head for over a month. And my favorite version of it, and maybe I'll put a link in the description when I'm done here. I don't want to play it because I don't want to get um, a copyright strike for playing somebody else's music. But it is a version that has the first verse in Hebrew and then the rest of it's in English. Anna Hawkins, and I'll link it down below. But it is she does such a beautiful job with the song, but and having it in Hebrew is even more fun. Um, but it was making me think about how much we make such a big deal about Christmas and about Advent, and how it is rightfully so a good time for us to refocus on Jesus, on Christ, what God has done for us, and how meaningful that is, and how significant that is, and how that should reorient us. But as I've been contemplating the words of O Come Emmanuel, and in her version, the first verse in Hebrew, and listening to the fascinating way that they translated that, it's into modern Hebrew, not biblical Hebrew, which there's a bit of a difference. So, but in the fascination of the word choices and just doing my thing with my brain that I do with the language, and loving the interplay and the fascination of translation and how that works. I was thinking about it, and I don't normally talk about eschatology. I usually avoid it like the plague, but it occurred to me how much the Christmas season, the coming of Advent, and our thinking about reorienting on the significance of the incarnation of Christ, and the Christmas really launches the celebration of the the incarnation and the significance of the life, the death, the resurrection, um, the burial and resurrection of Jesus. And we make, Christmas is so big. It is very big. And but I thought, how many times do I not put that much thought into the longing for the return of Christ, and how much of that is missed in the the mess that is the arguments of eschatology, which is why I stay out of those arguments, because I don't. Oh, well, that's a video for another day of why I hate eschatology. Though I really agree with Michael Heiser on that. So maybe I'll link that video in the description as well. But the point being, if we spend so much time and set aside a whole entire month to just contemplate the coming of Christ and the impact and the meaning of the coming of Christ, that we miss Jamie, you know what, Jamie, check your Facebook. I'm going to send you a link. Okay. I'm going to send you a link. You're going to just jump on here with me. So I'm going to do that while I'm continuing my thought. So, how much do we miss the thinking and the longing for the return of Christ, and how significant that is, that we don't, we just miss that. And, that I miss that in the avoidance of eschatology, because I think eschatology is a dumpster fire right now with all the fighting. So yes, Jamie, I've played it before. Jamie, check your Facebook messages. So, it just struck me, though, about in all of the arguments of, I think, and I would say, missing the point of eschatology. So I call myself, instead of following eschatology, I really talk about my being a coming of the final day of the Lord ology person, and just sidestep eschatology altogether. I know it's relabeling something that's actually what that is, but it for me, it refocuses the conversation out of the arguments in the dumpster fire, and puts it back on the whole idea of a second advent. And when do we celebrate a second advent? We put so much time and effort into the first, celebrating the first advent. We don't celebrate, at least I don't can think of anything where we sit and actually celebrate a second advent season, and the longing for the return of Christ. So, but anyway, that's was just something else that I was thinking about, that, that song, O Come Emmanuel, just really has brought me around, that one, in connection with, on I have a Christmas playlist that I've been contemplating, because I was thinking about doing an Advent, a couple of videos about some things for Advent, and I just didn't have time with everything that was going on. But I put that together with Come Thou Long Expected Jesus, and putting those two ideas in the song there, those two songs together, really has brought me around to the thinking about the second Advent. And so, just some kind of random thoughts, kind of running through my head right now. And as I was talking about it with a friend of mine this morning, about a whole lot of life transitions, and there's some other things that I'm thinking about and contemplating. And as we've been talking about some of those things, we were talking about, I got around to talking about the end of Deuteronomy, and it came up on Rogues Gallery yesterday, but we didn't get into the part of the end of Deuteronomy there that I find so much fun to talk about. But I just love, thinking about, you're reading that last sermon of Moses there in the end of Deuteronomy. You get into like 29, 30, 31, 32. There's a whole bunch of, there's wrapping up. Moses is wrapping up a whole bunch of things, trying to I think there's a lot going on there with Moses is desperately trying to get it into their heads, follow follow Yahweh. You're about to go into the promise that God has given you. Follow Yahweh, choose to stay with Yahweh. But because Moses has been with these people for so long and led them out, and my friend pointed out as we were going back and forth and talking about this and big decisions in life, look at we focus so much on in the Exodus story. I heard somebody the other day talking about it, like they their existence was wake up, build bricks, and die. And that's bothered me since I heard that pastor say that, and I've been thinking about that some more. And my friend reminded me this morning they were in Goshen. They were given the land of Goshen by Pharaoh because of Joseph. They were given Goshen, which that was the place where the herds went, herders, because sheep herders were abhorrent to Egyptians, but that was green, fertile, beautiful land. They were given a land of bounty. They were given a space for waiting that was, there has to be green because you have to have pastures to raise sheep and cows and animals, and that they were given, that in scripture it talks about they were given some of the choice land in Egypt. So even though their existence was miserable they were oppressed, and um, they were also in a beautiful place. And so the choice to leave a beautiful environment that is also a terrible situation. So I'm not saying, don't go too deep on that. I'm just saying, like, to walk out of that beautiful situation of a plentiful, beautiful space into a wilderness desert, um, is striking. And as thinking about that, choosing to leave something that is they left slavery and oppression, which was terrible, but it was also, they left the land of Goshen. So, I mean, there's a lot that I'm thinking about there that I still haven't straightened out yet, but the idea of leaving a plentiful, beautiful place for a desert, wandering around in the desert. And Moses at the end of that, as he's walked with these people through, they barely got out of Egypt, and then the golden calf, and they get to the land, and a bunch of them are not cooperative. And so God says, in punishment of their rebellion, you're going to go wander in the desert. I'm going to give you a chance. We're going to kill off all of the rebellious ones and all the kids, and the next generation are going to inherit the promise. They're going to get to go into the land. So Moses gets to go wander around with these people for 40 years in the desert, trying to figure out, how to do this better the second time. And in the end of Deuteronomy, Moses is standing there on the edge of the promised land at the end of his life, knowing that he doesn't get to go in because of himself and his choices and his rebellion. And you can just hear the pastor in him, the pastor's heart in him, pleading with them, please choose Yahweh, choose covenant, choose faithfulness, choose to follow, choose to accept the blessings of the promises that Yahweh is trying to give you. And then he starts and he changes tone, and he's just like, but I know you. You are stupidly stubborn, stiff-necked, and you're not going to be faithful. You're not going to continue to choose Yahweh. You're going to choose exile. And he prophesies about the exile and the destruction of Jerusalem and everything that's happening in the latter prophets. And you see that prophesied in in the end of Deuteronomy. And certain, some people will point to that as some sort of, exhaustive divine determinism, and making in Doctor Who what are called like fixed points in time. But if you look at that from the pastor's perspective, it is Moses, like, please do better. Do better that I know you can do, but I know you're not going to do, because I know you and I know you're stupidly stubborn. And I was thinking about that, and how beautiful Deuteronomy is, and how much God is longing to bless, and longing for them. Well, I think it is a prophecy, because it is a message from God. If you here's what I want to do, but if you don't do what the blessing I want to give you, that's going to result in you being exiled from the land. So yeah, I would say that the end of Deuteronomy is definitely, there's prophecy there. Moses was a prophet. But the point is, like, in just thinking about the decisions that I've had to make, and changing schools, and some more of the decisions that are coming, like, how much I need to listen to Moses. I need to listen to Moses and be more dependent on dwelling with God, and keeping that my focus, and not be stupidly stubborn like I can be sometimes, and get myself in trouble, and end up having to go back to God to get me out of the mess that I got myself in, because I didn't listen in the first place, or the second place, or the 37th place. So I'm gonna bring on my friend Jamie. So, hey, Jamie.
Hey. Yeah, you were bringing that up in the stream. I was like, is this a prophecy or is this a promise?
I think it's both. I think that, it's a descriptive prophecy of what could happen if you do what God is saying, and you follow being faithful to dwelling with Yahweh. God will give you all these beautiful blessings. But if you continue to be stubborn, stupid, stiff-necked, here's the description of what will happen. And Moses has, I think, at that point, been with these knotheads for a very long time. And when you've been with somebody for as long as Moses was wandering around with these guys, you have a pretty good idea of what people are going to do. Like, I know, my daughter is finishing up her school this year. She's going to graduate, and I know, I can't tell you with 100% certainty, because I'm not omniscient. But if we're going to go, if the question is asked, like, where do you want to go to get dinner, I can pretty much guarantee she's going to want to go somewhere like Asian food, because it's her favorite. So most of the time, that's going to be what she's going to pick. I mean, there are certain things, because of familiarity, people have patterns that are predictable. So, but God
That's what I'm going to pick. I'm going to pick Asian food.
Well, there you go.
So,
but I think it's understanding that we are creatures of habit. Life is cyclical. People have patterns, and knowing those patterns in ourselves. I think that, that's one of the things that living in relationship with God does, is teaches us those patterns, and teaches us through prayer, and through just living, trying to be more in alignment with what God has for us, in the fullness of relationship with Him, going outside those patterns and living out God's patterns instead of our patterns, I guess, is what I'm trying to say there. So, yeah.
Yeah, totally. I agree. I'm agreeing with that. I still get stuck on which reminds me of the Matrix movie where, like, if I hadn't said anything, would it have happened? And it's like, yes, it was going to happen. Like, so if a Calvinist or somebody asked me that, I'll be like,
Mhm.
yeah, I think it was going to happen. Even if God hadn't said that in the Bible, that's what I would say. I don't mean to change the subject here. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. At this point, I'm pretty much done rambling and done, kind of going through just a couple things. I didn't have a plan. It was just kind of like, you know what? I've got a few minutes. I'm gonna just jump on, see who's around, update some people on, the school thing is pretty much done, and I
Cool.
got my school account, got my new email address. I got all the things are set up and waiting for me at the new school, and it's partly very sad and partly a great relief, and I think it's going to be good. But change is always difficult. Forced change is even more difficult sometimes. And there's some channel stuff coming up that I can't quite talk about yet, but I just want to be respectful of all the people involved until the whole thing is formalized and finalized before I say too much. But there's some big channel things coming up, and that's really all that I kind of had. I was just kind of rambling to see who was around and thinking about Advent, and so I would like to hear your thoughts on that, Jamie, and how we put so much focus on Advent and Christmas and celebrating the incarnation, but we
Yeah.
we give the same respect to the longing, the come, O come, Emmanuel, like, come thou long expected Jesus, come back
Yeah.
now, like, that's neglected and totally missed the point on all of that.
So, yeah. So I've really enjoyed my conversations with people online that are not traditional Protestants that I've learned a lot about focusing more in on the incarnation that wasn't as strong as a thing in my tradition. I mean, it is if you get into the literature and stuff like that, and it's pretty clear. But a lot of Adventists I've noticed have a kind of there. It's real easy to fall into messing up incarnation. Although, in the literature and the people that are the teachers, they know better. But it's not something that's focused on because Adventists focus on the second Advent. And so I do see the second Advent as everything because I think that's what the New Testament is saying. Although that can be impractical and a lot of nonsense comes out of that sort of thinking. I'm not really sure exactly why that is, but that's been historically the case as I've looked at history. The Chilius or the Chilius or whatever you call them, people have been like, because they get there's a lot of, what do you call that? When people are acting insane, they call that people get extreme and do all sorts of weird stuff, like thinking it happened in
Oh,
this
yeah.
Great Awakening, I guess fanaticism
Mhm.
or something,
Yeah.
right? And gets people off track, which is obviously really dangerous. But yeah, to me, the second advent is like the hope of the faith, and seems like what the New Testament is saying our hope is. Titus 3 or whatever, or what Paul says to comfort one another with regarding what our hope is in 1 Corinthians 15 or 2 Thessalonians or 1 Thessalonians 4, how he says, well, we have hope because of Jesus. It's not just because Jesus died and rose again, but because he's coming back. And so even though some of the fathers fell asleep, essentially, we know, unlike those who don't have any hope, because Jesus rose again, that the Lord will bring with him those who fell asleep, etc. So that is the hope, to be reunited with the King and our people we've lost. And that's the hope we have that others don't have, in my mind. And I think that's
Yeah.
beautiful. So
When I think, like, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna pop the link to this in the chat, so if people want to go listen to it, and then I'll put it in the description afterwards when we're done. But this is the one that I've been playing a lot because it's this Anna Hawkins and her version of O Come, O Come, Emmanuel, and she does the first verse in Hebrew, which I love, and I think I talked about that a little bit, but it also to me brings out the way that she does this song, this version of it. I wish I could play it. I don't want to get copyright strike, so I'm not going to. But the way that she just does this version, it also pulls out this longing, and that's the thing that's been sticking with me, and it's not the longing of the first advent. It really is the longing for the second advent. And that I think that idea and that longing for that second advent gets lost in fighting about the dumpster fire that is eschatology, about pre-mill, post-mill, mill, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think I don't think that that's even the point of this, the what should be. So why I call myself, instead of talking about eschatology, I will say that I will talk about the day of the Lordology and the final day of the Lordology, because I think it's more about living in a way to, I think God cares more about dwelling with his people, and he wants everyone to be his people. So we should be in the longing of O come, Emmanuel, but that means we need to get everybody in, as many people as we can get in. It's about the zeal of evangelism. It's about the zeal of bringing as many people into relationship as possible before, before Christ does come. It's more about that than it is about dates and timelines and numbers and calendars. And I think if, and Jamie, I know
Word.
you're going to disagree with me on this a little bit, but that's
No,
okay.
not really. Not
Uh,
really. Not so far.
it's, it isn't. If God wanted us to know, if Revelation would have ended with another sentence that said, by the way, I'll be back on, you know, Thursday, October 14th, 2067. Be ready.
Right.
Like,
October
you
22,
know,
1844,
right.
maybe.
Or whatever it is. I just pulled some random number out of my head, some random day out of my head. Like, if the point was the day of his return, and I love, this is one of the things I love that I've heard Dr. Heiser say in a lot of several videos. There is detail on the things that we're supposed to pay attention to. Sometimes things are not clear because that's not the point of what we're supposed to focus on. We need to be aware of those things, and there's room for disagreement. There's room for different ways for that to play out on purpose. The things that we need to focus on are the stuff that's very clear. There is no question at all about the incarnation, about Jesus, about the significance, the power of the life, death, burial, and resurrection of Christ. That is extremely clear, extremely well documented, and that's what we need to be focusing. I mean, God is very clear on things for a reason and vague on things for a reason. And I think we get too distracted and hung up on the things that aren't clear, trying to figure out clarity where there isn't, intentionally. So, I mean, this is kind of one of my things that I'm kind of thinking through, and as people are arguing about things, it's like, does that argument really matter? I mean, really, does it? Or should we be spending more time on the things that are very, very obviously clear in scripture? And that's the stuff we're supposed to be given the majority of our focus and the majority of our efforts and energies and attentions, not neglecting the other things. You know what I mean? Like maybe reflipping
No,
our
totally.
priority in our thinking. Yeah.
Well, evangelism is supposed to be the most important. It's like the Great Commission
Hmm.
is the priority. And that you see, in my church, you see this. It's not really supposed to be attention. It's supposed to be a reason to be. So, like, yeah, you're not supposed to know the day or the hour. That's something that's pressed. I mean, I blame the Baptists for the whole debacle of 1844, but because Miller was a Baptist, so I'm just teasing. But yeah, Adventists believe it's the time of the end, but nobody knows the day or the hour, and so it's supposed to be something to look forward to without making dates, but there's sort of I agree with you. I'll say that. Oh, but what do you think about the last verse of the Bible? How should we read this?
The
For I
last
test,
verse of
yeah,
the Bible.
yeah, um, it says this, and behold, I'm coming quickly, and my reward is with me to give to everyone according to his work. I'm the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, first and the last. Blessed are those who do his commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life. I skipped back too far. Sorry. This is what I wanted to read. He says, I, Jesus, have sent my angel to testify to you these things in the churches. People say the book of Revelation isn't for the churches, yet the book ends saying, I've testified these things in the churches. I am the root and the offspring of David, the bright and morning star. It's Jesus speaking. And the Spirit and the bride say, come. And let him who hears say, come. And let him who thirsts come. Whoever desires, let him take of the water of life freely. For I testify to everyone who hears the words of this prophecy of this book. If anyone adds, God will add the plagues to them. And or if anyone takes away from the words of this book, God shall take away his part from the book of life, from the holy city, from the things which are written in this book. He who testifies to these things says, surely I'm coming quickly. Amen. Even so come, Lord Jesus. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ be with you all. Amen. How do you read? How do you take that?
I take that as O come, Emmanuel.
Amen.
And and yeah, that to me is the song, O come, Emmanuel. And free your captive Israel, who long in lonely advent here. I just, yeah, the words of O come, Emmanuel. Because that's one of the oldest Christmas songs we have preserved in the Protestant tradition anyway, because that song dates back to about the 1200s, I think, if I remember correctly. Um, that song's been passed down throughout church history.
Seems old.
Yeah, it is. And
It's good.
I've come to, I'm thinking about some things. And actually, Jamie, when we're done, I have something to run past you and some thoughts to run past you. I'm not ready to go public with yet, but as I'm contemplating some things, it all to me comes back to to the song "O Come, Emmanuel." It is a beautiful song. There's so many beautiful ways for people to have done, renditions of that. This one happens to be my favorite there because the first verse is in Hebrew, so I do love that. And I was thinking about this. So here's a question I have for you. So
Okay.
because I was thinking about the other day, I was so like I was sitting there thinking about you and some of my other friends that are just scattered across the country. And Kyle's another one. And I was like, how annoyed I am that we are all in different places in different time zones, and we don't get to hang out. We don't get to just, you know, be together and doing cool stuff and having a lot of fun. Everybody's got lives and everybody's busy and things are happening and whatever. And it occurred to me, and this is my question to you, Jamie, is that actually another version of O come, Emmanuel? Because in eternity, depending on how you define that, and we're not going to get into that argument, but in eternity, I expect Kyle and I and you, Jamie, and some of my Orthodox friends and my Catholic friends, and you know, eh, those of us who are full in Christ's followers, Christ seekers, all wind up in eternity together. Is that the same thing as longing for O come, Emmanuel?
For sure. I think that's what I think.
Because
Definitely.
I
Like
will,
that's how I think about it.
yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
like I cannot wait for. I mean, obviously, the return of Christ would be amazing and opt us out of life being difficult and the consequences of living in a fallen world. But even, as a side tangent on that, just getting to think about, and one of those things that cheers me up on a hard day is thinking about things like, you and I, Jamie, in a space where time and material things and the realities of having to, have a job to live, or, the needing to have a job to eat, or, those things in life that keep us from being in full community, so that, in eternity, you and I, Jamie, get to just sit around and yak about whatever for as long as we want, because
Yes.
there's none of those other things that prevent that.
Totally. I mean, you remember for me, that is like that's all the faith is to me in a sense, like, because I don't think you go to heaven when you die. So I'm like, alls I have is the coming of Jesus, the second advent, So like, that's all I can wait for. But yeah, I totally. I was just thinking too that that song, which has like a total Hebrew vibe to it, just
Mhm.
the way I'm
Mhm.
like hearing the Hebrew.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think I must have heard the same version of you're talking about. I'm gonna check it out after this, but I mean, you can kind of uh just meditate on that song as like the beauty of the first advent, but like for me, it's totally the second advent, almost entirely. But I could totally see how someone could kind of in the
Mhm.
Christmas season be thinking of this first advent, which of course I think about all the time, but I think it's awesome. And it literally, because of what the text says and the reality of the historicity of those stories, which
Mhm.
makes them all the more truer in the truthy way sense, like Jordan Peterson truth sort of thing, and the reality of it. It's like, uh, that's a foundational, obviously, thing to the faith for me. But you can kind of
Yeah, and
contemplate advents already, but not yet, sort of thing, in a way.
and just also being able to be able to exist in a space that Kyle, um, that to be able to exist in a space where we can just live as one giant family in community with God, and that we don't, you and I and Kyle and Troy and Sarah get to just exist in a space, and we don't have these imaginary divisions that we put between us. So, you and I won't have any differences of opinion because you're Adventist and I'm not, because we're all those questions are answered, and we are living in the blessings of dwelling together with Yahweh in the community as we all should have been together as God intended. And that to me is such an encouraging thought on a bad day, that you and I, Jamie, get to sit down with Troy and Kyle and not argue about anything, because all those questions have been settled, and we get to purely enjoy the,
Yeah, word.
the beauty of community. So I just, that really, those some of those kinds of thoughts get me through the difficult days.
Totally. I expect Troy to drag me across the finish line.
You
I
and me both, man. You and me both. Okay, well, and for Kyle, yep, we'll have an arguing room if you wanna go argue. You go right ahead. Go over to the arguing room over there and argue about, I don't know what you're gonna argue about, but, if you you wanna argue, I guess we'll have a space for that. But, I just, yeah, I'm just thinking about how, that and O Come Emmanuel, and I think it's Meredith, um I don't wanna get her name wrong, but she does a version of, "Come Thou Long Expected Jesus," that's got a piece added to the middle that I absolutely, it really gets me thinking about this whole same idea, those songs together, because I play them back to back, and just this idea, "Come Thou Long Expected Jesus," and those songs really are not, I don't think, primarily about the first coming. The more I think about them.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just thinking the other way around because it's always been a second coming kind of thought to me, but you can totally meditate on it as both. Obviously, they're both equally important in different ways. I posted a song too that I really like. Maybe it's too poppy for some people, but I really like the vocals on it. I posted on my community page to check it out.
Yeah,
Let me know
I
if it's
saw
too
it. I
poppy.
didn't. Oh no, I love that song too. I just didn't get a chance to listen to it again. It's one that's on. I have several different playlists, and it's on one of my playlists that I listen to sometimes. Yeah, I love that song a lot too. But I'm gonna pull up that other one and put it in the chat too because I
I
just
I
love that
um
one.
I know I hate that we can't play songs on here because I would if I could. Or I have in the past, and they are better about like playing songs on here where they won't like give you a strike. They'll just make it so you can't monetize the video. But I don't really monetize my videos anyway. Even though I have
I'm
them on
not
a streak.
monetized at all.
But you're almost there. You'll be there soon. I
Oh
mean,
wow.
you're on your way, I should say.
I don't know about that. So here's the other one. This is the Meredith Andrews Come Thou Unexpected Jesus version. I love it. It's but I love the middle. So you know what, Jamie? Let's get in trouble. How about that? We're gonna get in
Try it.
trouble.
Yeah.
Ready? We're gonna get in trouble. So well, I'm gonna play the other one first. So I don't know. I'm not very good at this because I've not done a lot of this. So we'll try it and see. Let me know. Uh I don't know how
If
do I
you
do this?
share the screen and then so if you share the screen, I don't know if you're using Chrome because I've had problems if I don't use Chrome, but um, I think it might be working if you're not using Chrome, but and then you
Okay.
can actually share it, but not share the screen, and that might help not get it in trouble. So like you can, if you're worried about and you don't care about the video, you just want the sound, you can just switch it over to us on screen and it'll still play the sound.
Okay. Well, I want to. We don't. We're gonna get in trouble, Jamie. We're just gonna get in
Okay.
trouble. You ready? We're gonna just get in trouble because I don't get in trouble intentionally very often. So we're gonna do it. All right. So let me know if you guys can hear this. Like if you can hear this.
I'm not hearing anything.
Okay. So I don't. I must have shared that wrong. Then let me figure
When
out
you
how to
share it,
do
make sure you flip that switch at the bottom when you
this.
share. Let's see when you
Uh,
it'll be on the bottom. It'll be right above the share button when you pick something to share. There's a switch that says share audio, tab audio.
audio shared tab or screen instead. Oh, okay. So
You got to flip that switch at the bottom right above the share cancel
okay,
buttons.
share tab with audio, but it's not showing me.
Click on
Oh,
window.
okay. I
Maybe.
know what I did wrong. I've got it. I'm trying to share a video from a different
Okay.
so I need to switch over to
If
hang
you're
on.
sharing it on a window of a different program, you might have to share your entire screen or something and
Yeah,
then
that's what I
switch
was
the
trying to
audio.
do. So I was using my other account um to do
Okay.
so let me do this. It's going to take me a second. I need to rearrange things a little bit here so that I can do this because I can't multitask very well. So I cancel that and do this. And then see, this is learning on the fly. See, Jamie, this is one of the things I love about you. You're helping me out.
Not even a single filling in her teeth, which impresses me, by the way. But I'm weird, sorry. But the beauty of that as it cycled through the settings and the scenery was awesome. That song is awesome. I'm on mute now. You're muted if you're there.
I think I was muted. I think I
Yeah,
was
yeah. I was
muted.
like, I'll give you a minute. I'll give you a minute to absorb that for a second. But
Yeah, her. Oh, I just love that, and I think that they did a good job walking through some of those places in Jesus' life because I think that's the point. The point of that is not ultimately the first Advent, it's the second Advent. And just noting her Hebrew pronunciation is better than mine. I don't know who her coach was there, but yeah, her Hebrew pronunciation is better than mine, which I appreciate always. But I just, the cello, I think, pulls out some more of that longing in that song of, because that song's been stuck in my head for a long time. I listened to it even like in July. I'm still listening to that because I'm still contemplating O Come Emmanuel," and that isn't really Advent's important, but the second Advent is even more important, I think. And so I just really
You won't get any complaints from me on that.
like like I just love that whole thing. And then I'm gonna go ahead and get in even more trouble and play the other one in a second. But I just, I think, and as I'm on this journey of belonging, I guess. I don't know if I would say belonging, that might not be the best word, but, in this journey of, I guess I'll say this, and Jamie, I would love to hear your thoughts on this too. So, Troy over there in the comments, I adore Troy, but, said something to me a little while ago as we've been having some really interesting conversations about, being in the spaces and finding the spaces where you find Christ. And I'm not gonna go into too much detail on that for a lot of reasons, but it struck me, and it's been striking, and it's been redefining a lot of the ways that I look at a lot of things in the places that I am in, that I'm going into, that I'm coming out of, thinking about changing spaces, lives that I interact with, and the the Christ follower that I am trying to become. Where am I finding Christ in those interactions? And are people finding Christ in their interactions with me? So, but Jamie, what do you think about that? Like finding Christ in the place of, is he there or do we find him there? What happens when we don't
Totally.
find him there? Like,
Yeah, how to want to love people and love yourself when you mess up and not but yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. I like try to surround myself with people like that, and I get caught up in little squabbles and stupid stuff, and it's a growing opportunity. Um, Try not to be too embarrassed or prideful about it and acknowledge it. It's not easy, but it's a way to grow for me. And so, but yeah, that's my goal. That's what draws me to people, seeing Christ in the way they operate, while recognizing they're not Christ, but that's what makes you grow. You see, I mean, that for me, that's what keeps my faith going is seeing Christ in other people and the reality of it. Those are the most faith building things for me in my operations from interacting with people and just living my life. That's what keeps me going. And I see that in you all the
what
time.
what about the opposite though? What about the spaces? So like, if communities that you're in, what if you're, you know, in a church and you're not finding Christ there? It not meaning that's a bad church. I'm just saying, what if you in your interactions in that space aren't finding Christ there?
Yeah, I don't I'm not sure because there's a weird interaction for me anyways between
Mhm,
what I think the Bible's teaching and then also the need for the right kind of community. And I guess that's an
mhm,
advantage you could have with a careful community online with people that can be helpful to that. And then because it's like because people will I know I can just speak from experience. The there's kind of like two ways people come at that sort of problem where they'll say, well, they have like a nostalgia for their denomination or they'll agree with
mhm.
it or something and they'll want to like try to help uplift it through positive reinforcement, but that takes like a really strong person to actually be able to realistically do that, and it's probably not something most people are able to do in a healthy way, perhaps, maybe realistically. So I'm really not sure how to approach that. I think it might be something you have to like decide personally in prayer or whatever. But I mean, I think obviously you need to find community with people that
Mhm.
are seeking after those things you mentioned.
Yeah,
Because
and
it's where you actually have a real faith, I think, of like how it's supposed to be.
when I've been thinking about spiritual journeys a lot, and one of the things, like, I don't know, Jamie, if I sent this to you at some point, I'll send remind me and I'll send it to you, because somebody asked me about my channel name and what my channel name means and where it came from, and asked because I guess there's a song or something, I don't know, that they pointed out. I was like, I had never heard of it before. They asked me where, so I sent them a link to the song that inspired the whole idea behind my channel name and behind the whole, and as spiritual journeys and as we're on spiritual journeys, and again, Jamie, I really want to hear your thoughts on this. Like, some people, in my just observation and in interacting with people, some people are I don't know what you would say exactly, but more longing for deeper things than others, I guess. Um, Not that some people, not everybody's not capable of deep, but some people thrive in levels of depth that others don't, if that makes any sense.
No, no, totally. And it's a difficult thing because you don't want to like paint. I mean, I've noticed this with like the atonement theory. Like people talk about the stages of atonement theory, and it's like I don't really like that sort of approach, but it's like I can't really deny its validity. Um, I don't want to have like a class system on on how to like think of people or whatever. Um,
I mean,
so,
that's
but I
one of
hear
the
what
things
you're
that
saying. But it's just
uh,
reality in a way, right?
mhm. I mean, that's one of the things I love about you is I've seen you in this longing for depth, this longing for depth of faith, a longing for depth of connection, a longing for a deeper understanding that a lot of folks, I don't know, a lot, it's maybe a big word, but that our distracted culture doesn't encourage, maybe is a better way to say that. Um,
Right. Yeah. I By the way, I gave you I put my phone number, my new phone number in the
okay.
chat there for you.
All right. I see
Um,
that.
the say that again. Sorry, I was distracted.
So, so the idea of some, our distracted culture doesn't encourage going deep, and our uh sometimes just, that idea that some people are naturally deeper than others. I will admit I have a very low tolerance for things that I feel are shallow. I don't like shallow conversations. I hate chit chat. I
Yeah,
don't like I just, don't waste my time. I have I'm highly introverted, and when I finally make it up there and come see you, Jamie, like I am like a derpy nerd that doesn't talk a lot because I'm introverted, but I don't like shallow chit chat. I don't like, sitting around getting to know you, introducing each other games. I hate those. I hate mixers. I hate like all that stuff. I hate
feel
all
you.
that stuff. Like
Let's
I
just get
really
to it.
do.
Let's just
Like,
get
let's just,
jump into it. The deep end. You want to jump right in, right?
that's just, if I'm going to talk to you, I want to talk about stuff that has substance and depth and has meaning. And that's the stuff that I love. So, you and your, three truths and a lie, get to know you game, go away. I don't care. I don't want to play those kinds of
Yeah,
games.
I feel you.
I I hate that kind of stuff, but, because I love deep conversations, and
Yeah.
I've been able to in this space, but they're not, and you also have to realize on certain levels, there's not, uh, always a reality to them. You can try to be as real as you can in this kind of a way, but there is something very different about sitting down face to face with somebody in a connection level that you can't have in this kind of space. Um, so there's also that. idea of the knowledge of depth too, because there's a limit to this. As much as I love my friends in the community that I have here, and with people like Kyle and Troy and you and Tyler Fowler and Josh Davidson, and all of the friends that I've made, and the people that I consider my friends, not just like Facebook friends or whatnot, but the people I actually consider in my circle of real like friends, that even that there's a limit in this kind of space to that. But I have also had more opportunities to have a lot of the kinds of depth of conversations that I long to have that I don't have with the people around me, which also makes me sad.
No, I totally. We're the same that way. I think I'll just say sometimes I just don't even pay attention to. I think about what I'm talking about, and I realize like if I don't give any explanation and I'm just jump right into it, I find that no one knows what I'm talking about, and then I'm like, oh wow, I have no self-awareness in that. So I try to balance out that sort of thing. I realize I'm talking to someone and they don't really know what I'm talking about, maybe, and there's nothing worse than realizing you're talking past someone for a long, long time, but you never took the time to stop and realize what you're doing. So, but I'm with you on that. That's just what you made me think of something I've realized recently, and like I long for the same thing you're talking about, and so, and I don't like the idea of patronizing people, but I also don't want to assume too much about
Mm-hmm.
about what I'm assuming someone is engaging with what I'm talking about, and I realize they're not, maybe, and then I realize that's my fault, it's on me, and I just hate the idea of patronizing people. So or being slimy or schmoozing people or something, and so like I really try
Yeah.
to avoid that. I struggle with that, but I'm with
I,
you. I totally feel you. I'm just kind of spilling my guts here.
well, there's also a beauty to your honesty and your authenticity and your, I would say, organicness that comes through in a very genuine way, which is one of the things I love and adore about you, Jamie, is I can see that even through this very limited interaction with people in a way that's not organic. Your organicness still comes through.
Yeah, I'm not afraid to be like I don't like to be mean, but I don't want to sugarcoat what I'm saying to the point where I'm being schmoozy, right? And then that doesn't
Mhm.
always come across very healthy or nice, and I'm working on that.
Well, no, it's just your heart for depth, your heart for truth, your heart for others, and your care for others is the thing that I'm talking about. No, we've had some conversations, and I've pushed back on you occasionally about the way that you choose to express that sometimes, because sometimes I think we all have our ways that we need to learn to express ourselves better, me included.
I do
But
appreciate that. I want people in my life that do that, so thank you.
I just,
Even though I don't
but
always it's not always easy to receive always, right? But at the end of the day, I really do want people in my life that are like, have friends. I want friends that are willing to do that. Thank you.
and hopefully it always comes through and you remember that I only do that with people that I care about, and that it is always done in loving concern and never just don't be a jerk. Like that's not the intention. The intention is I see better in you, so live up to the better that I see in you because I care about you, my friend, and not don't be a jerk. Like
Yeah, thanks. I have an appointment, so
yeah.
it's been great talking to you.
Yeah, well,
Love
you
you.
got a stream coming up here in a minute too, don't you? I think.
Yeah,
So,
I do. So
yeah.
thanks for having me, though. I really
Yep,
mean that, though. I appreciate you for being that friend for me.
I know I love and appreciate you too, man, and you and I gonna get to have infinite conversations in eternity at some point.
Yeah, you better learn how to play like
So
Rook. So, okay. See ya.
awesome.
Have a
All
good
right, be wave.
day.
All right.
Okay. Bye.
All right. So I'm also I gotta wrap up because I need to go finish a paper and I have to go on campus and say goodbye to a bunch of people today too. So I'm gonna wrap up and get some things going. I went way longer than I meant to, but pulling Jamie on is always fun, and I always enjoy Jamie. But thanks if the those of you who have been coming and going and hanging around and listening to just me talking and thinking out loud and having Jamie on and I appreciate all of you and yeah, and watch out for the next I don't know when it's coming very soon some channel announcement and there's some other stuff that we'll be talking about that I can't quite tip my hand yet. Tomorrow, why Leviticus matters. We're going to talk about why Leviticus matters, and that's going to be Courtney Trotter and Spencer Owen and Phil. Oh, my head, I can't remember. My head just fell out of my head. I can't remember Phil's last name. Phil is amazing. So I ran into him in through my connections to um this online this conversation group that I'm in. And we'll talk about it a little bit more tomorrow in that video, but he got interested in Leviticus because he's a butcher and got fascinated by the animal sacrifice and then discovered what Leviticus is really about. So he'll be really fun to have on. He has a great channel on Leviticus is fun. So Sarap, Godspeed to you as well, my friend. Um, Also looking forward to eternity talking to you as well, brother. And so, but yeah, I just wanted to just wrap up. I got things. Everybody's got things to do. Unfortunately, we're we're not in the second O come Emmanuel yet, so we got lives to live. So everybody go and be blessed. And um, every day, we do journey to dwell with Yahweh better than we did the day before. So, and I hope that you get to experience some of that today. All right, go and be blessed.